Welcome back to another edition of the Course Creation Incubator podcast. I'm your host, Gina Anativia, here to get you excited about your course creation and whatever you're putting out there in the moment in terms of your online marketing. And I don't know about you, but sometimes I feel stuck in my business, in my course creation, and I'm always looking for tools to change what's not working. And time to time, I love to share books with you guys and just summarize them and pull out the best parts of them. And today we're talking about Reset, How to Change What's Not Working by Dan Heath. Awesome, awesome book. I highly recommend it. I'll link to it in the show notes. This is going to be a two-parter. In part one, we're going to talk about how to find better leverage and get the most out of your course creation. And in part two, we're going to talk more about how to get the most out of your people, whether you have a current team or you have a VA, or you just have somebody helping you part-time, whatever that looks like. So it'll be two parts. And I'm so excited to share this with you and hoping that you can maximize what you're doing right now, whether it's putting together an online course, a workshop, a cohort, whatever it looks like, an event. I want to help you get the most out of it. And Dan Heath is going to help us. This is the guy who wrote Made to Stick, Power of Moments. I did a podcast about Power of Moments, Switch and Upstream. He works with his brother to write these amazing books and case studies. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And I pride myself in breaking down books like this. So I had a mastermind member who once said to me, we were at a conference together, at a digital marketing conference, and we walked out of this really powerful segment. And she said, okay, Gina, now you're going to report back about how we need to implement in our business, right? Ever since I worked for Tony Robbins, the big guy, I've really studied him in terms of how he broke down information, because he would read, he still does, I'm sure to this day, and he takes in a massive amount of content, and he's just an absolute genius in terms of how he breaks it down. So I learned to model him and what he was doing when he would take this new content and make it digestible. So my hope is that I take Reset and make it digestible for you guys in terms of how to implement it into your online course business. Now, before we get started, this episode is of course brought to you by our Done For You process. If you want custom, high touch hand-holding in terms of your course creation and your marketing, think about working with us in our Done For You process. And we only take a couple of clients. You work with me, by the way, because I've been looking at some of our competitors and it looks like kind of a Done For You farm. Sorry to say it. But with us, we're called Boutique for a reason, and you get to work with me and my mighty team directly. So go to coursecreationboutique.com/course to learn more and to set up an appointment. All right, so there's 4 pieces or elements that I want to break down today. Now, in Reset, Dan Heath has a diagram in the back, and then you could download a bigger version of it. So he's got quite a comprehensive program to reset your business, your life, whatever you're looking for. By the way, the case studies are off the charts. He talks about a radiology unit that wanted to help their clients, their patients more. He talks about businesses that were failing that did huge turnarounds. So this is just a piece of it. I do invite you to get the entire diagram in the book. And this is what I culled from it that I thought was really powerful. And so how to find better leverage and maximize your course creation. Number 1, think about the goal of the goal. So this is awesome, right? Because sometimes we think, okay, I want to build a signature course, for example, because I see everyone else building signature courses. I want to get my 5-step program out in a bigger way, and it's going to be a signature course because that's what I see everyone else doing, right? But if you think about the goal of the goal, it's really to maybe train coaches on being facilitators of your practice, right? So you think signature course is your delivery and your ultimate goal, but really what you want is to train people in your practice, in your system. And in that case, a series of live workshops with Q&A might be the real goal of the goal. So dig in because you might find a different way to get the outcome. So Dan Heath in this book is encouraging you just to think about like, what is the real outcome? And that's, you guys know that. That's my favorite question, right? We're asking what's the outcome because people come to me all the time and say, Gina, I am going to build a signature course. I'm like, well, is that really right for you? So dig deep and think the goal of the goal. So that's our first element from reset. And are you really getting your outcome based on what you think you're building? And can you be more flexible to think about other options? Listen to my episode about structures, where I toss out a couple of different ways to record. I think sometimes when we get stuck on a specific delivery, like, hey, I'm going to do a signature, I'm going to do a starter course, it's because we don't know what else is out there and we don't know what other options are open to us. I want you to be resourceful and to know what's out there and just know that there's many, many ways to deliver your amazing content and to be an expert, okay, and to go beyond the one-to-ones. It doesn't have to be, for example, a signature course. So that's number one. Think about the goal of the goal, okay? Number two, study the bright spots. Now, I've talked about this a little bit before when I did my planning session. I think last year I did this for the new year in terms of how to plan out your year for your business. And I always love to build on success. Always, always, always. That's what Dan Heath is talking about here. How can you replicate your best work? So instead of starting from scratch, what are the bright spots? In the book, Dan Heath gives this great example of bright spots in terms of cats having to be put down in a shelter. And I think he focuses on a specific shelter in Florida. The problem was they were overrun in the shelters. There were just not enough people to adopt them. So they asked, what if instead the cats were treated and put back into the community? Because not all cats were house pets, many were feral. Others were neighborhood cats living outside and making a daily circuit among many different homes. They didn't need adoptive homes to survive. And they needed to be vaccinated and sterilized and then released. And it was a holy you know what, moment. And this entire system we've been burdened by for 100 years, built on a fundamental premise that was never questioned until this guy came in and asked, could you just put them back? Return to the field was the name that they proposed. Once sterilized, the cats wouldn't contribute to overpopulation. Once vaccinated, they wouldn't spread disease. Once released from the shelter, they wouldn't clog up space and staff time, meaning that the remaining cats were healthier and better cared for and more likely to be adopted. So, and then the objection was, wait a minute, is the community going to be overrun by cats? But it didn't happen. One reason was that spaying and neutering the cats' behavior changed them. So this actually lowered the population of cats. So, I mean, that was a great example. So the bright spot was returning them to the field, right? They were so afraid of that, but it was actually the solution. And now they didn't have to put as many cats down. Now, this is not a podcast about cats. I get that. This is this is a business podcast about course creation and digital marketing. What does this have to do with us, Gina? Well, they had to question something that had long been doubted. There was a solution staring them in the face, but they didn't want to believe it, right? Because it seemed not plausible. So, but they realized it's a bright spot. They realized actually they were getting good results, just neutering the cats and spaying them and letting them out back into the wild. So what does that mean for you? Where's your bright spot that you can build on? So we were looking at doing some coaching. This was a few years ago. And I released like a mini coaching offer that I was doing of several offers at the time. And this mini coaching offer was a real bright spot for us. So we ended up growing it. And this was a few years ago. We're not doing it anymore, but we built on this bright spot because we knew people were asking for it. And it was something that we hadn't considered before. So for you, what might that be in terms of your course creation? Is there a workshop you should be testing out because you've seen some small response to it? What bright spots can you build on? Okay, so that's element number two. The third element to help us get better leverage in terms of our course creation is targeting the constraint. What's the constraint? It's a limiting factor. It's the number one force that is holding you back from doing your work better on a greater scale. And in your search for leverage points, you're looking for candidates that target the constraint, that erode the obstacles standing in the way. So then he brings up an example of Chick-fil-A and their drive-through and how they had seen some obstacles and some constraints. And it's about managing the bottlenecks. So their constraint was the bottleneck that was happening in their drive-through. So they decided, and I don't know if you guys have seen this. So Tristan, my 11-year-old, loves In-N-Out Burger. And at In-N-Out Burger, it is always packed here in SoCal. We love our In-N-Out Burger. And somebody comes out to your car. They don't wait till you go through the drive-through window. And there's often at least two people that come out to your car and take your order. Now, this is what Chick-fil-A did as well, this face-to-face interaction, and somebody takes your order earlier. So they go face-to-face because it's quicker. They allow the kitchen more time to cook, and then they enable the workflow to go a little bit faster. So it's a win-win. So that was the constraint for Chick-fil-A. Again, we're not selling chicken sandwiches here. What's the constraint for you? I did a strategy call, a sales call the other day with a software company, and I was talking to them, and their constraint was that they had one guy who was building their courses part-time, doing an awesome job, but doing it part-time. He had a full-time role somewhere else, and he happened to be really great at courses. So like when he found time for it, he would build their courses. Now they were realizing this was a restraint because they had 3 courses they wanted to build, they wanted to scale, and they couldn't rely on, I'm going to call him Johnny, to just keep churning out courses on the side. So to target that restraint, they were talking to me in terms of doing done for you, right? They were looking for leverage. Can you help us figure out how to build this so we're not reliant on that constraint anymore? So smart. Think about what's constraining you. What obstacle is holding you back from either building your course or scaling? And how can you target and just beat that restraint and beat that constraint? All right. And the fourth and final element, this is great, is about mapping the system. And this again, and I think one of the themes that's been following us throughout is when we're stuck, we have to challenge all of our thinking, right? Because mapping the system, part of the question around that is, why do we have to do it that way? And thinking through the old ways of doing it and why are we still continuing to do that? So in the book, he talks about a radiology department and the flow of patients and how they used to have to bring a patient from one side of the building to all the way to the other side until somebody questioned that, like, why does that make sense? Like, why are we still doing that? And it's because that's the way we've always been doing it. That's not a good answer. So we want to question, we want to challenge our thinking and mapping the system and figuring it out. So we're doing this right now with our podcast, by the way. I've brought in a project manager. She's mapping all of our systems to figure out, hey, where do we have some holes? Where can we strengthen that? Where can we maximize? So I encourage you to map the system and figure out, okay, why are you continuing to do it that way? Can we switch it up? Here's another example of why do you have to do it this way? I was talking to a course creator 2 weeks ago, and she was saying that she was building her course. Her cousin was really great at design, was supposed to be taking care of all the design and the slides, and she had been waiting for her cousin. So if you mapped her system, right, you would see that the whole, even though it seemed like a great idea because her cousin was going to do a trade with her, it was slowing her down and it wasn't getting her course done. So if she just questioned, like, why do I have to do it this way? Then she would realize, okay, this is where I need to take my course. I actually need to get total leverage. So that's a flag to me, by the way. Whenever you're starting a course and you've got a bunch of different pieces flying around, instead of trying to keep it holistic and in one spot, that is tougher to build your course. If I could just get on my soapbox for a minute, as much as possible, And that's why I love our done for you process, because we take it all in-house for you. We're not going to tell you, oh yeah, we don't do that, like go get that somewhere else. We do it all. So you don't have to worry about pieces like that. And you don't have to worry about, cousin Betsy trying to figure out your slides. So I invite you to question and to map out your system and see where your holes might be, because Dan Heath would encourage you to do that. All right. So thinking through a recap of our 4 elements today: what's the goal of the goal? What's the current outcome? 2, study the bright spots and then replicate them and replicate your best work. 3, target the constraint and just beat it, right? Find a solution. And then 4, map the system and really question, why do I have to do it this way? So hopefully this was helpful. Please make sure you're subscribed. So we're going to do part 2 next week, which is really getting the most out of your people. I can't wait to talk about this as well in terms of reset. So hopefully this got you a little bit unstuck, and look forward to connecting with you next week. Until then, go create, be you and be brilliant, and get it done.